Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Class is in session. Andrea Perron is the author of the trilogy, House of Darkness, House of Light. Her books chronicle the life that she shared with dead and living alike. When, at the age of 12, her family moved into a colonial-era farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Let me just repeat a tiny part of that. Chronicle of the life she shared with the dead and living alike. Heavy duty. Her books by design immerse the reader into her family's decade-long journey living on the front lines of the ongoing battle between good and evil. Should you decide to take this journey with her and her family, she believes that you will be enlightened, you will be changed for the better forever. I can't wait to hear more. Please welcome Andrea Perron.
Thank you very much. Hello, my darlings. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. I normally just wing it because everything that's in me has so become indoctrinated in terms of being seared into my human brain that I really don't normally bring notes or anything. I just talk. But I think so much of all of you, and Paula Harris, my dear friend, Regina Meredith, brilliant. I mean, talk about lights in the firmament. These women have changed my life. They have given me a forum that I have not had before. And so for them, I brought a little booklet of notes. And there's so much material to cover here that it does require some modicum of organizational skills. So I think I've got it down. Here, let me just move this little thing here. In some ways, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. You know, everybody that's here is here with purpose and reason. Everybody that's here knows something that they bring to the table. Thoughts are things, and we are cumulatively creating a hotbed of thought in this incredible venue at the Starwork Symposium that is literally going out into the world. Out into the world it goes. We are simply by gathering here in this venue, changing the world for the better. And that's an important note to start on. We are in a new age. You know, Paula was talking about, you know, can you handle it? A new world, if you can take it. And my attitude is bring it on, because this isn't working for me. I don't know about you, but this is not the world as we have, you know, the structural deformities that exist in our global society are problematic at best. And if I am going to be a messenger of light and love, I need to tell you in advance, before we go any further, I am not a one-dimensional being. Yes, light and love, all for it. But I am also a fierce spiritual warrior for peace. I am the voice of the voiceless. I am the defender of the defenseless. And it wasn't until recently, in the last couple of years, that I understood what my true mission was, what my destiny was to be fulfilled. It began when I was 12 years old. At 12 years of age, I saw my first full-body apparition, and he appeared to me in such solid form that I said good morning to him as I passed by him as we were moving into the farmhouse. Now, he ignored me like I was the ghost, and that's fine. You know, I didn't take that personally. I just knew there was something very odd and unusual about this man. Now, in the process of coming to terms with this, and I was a very intellectually precocious child, seeing him and understanding that when my sister Nancy came into the kitchen and said, "You know that man that was dressed so funny in the dining room? He just disappeared." My mother had said to 4 of the 5 of us, "There is no other man in the dining room." And we're like, "Yeah, Mom, there is." Well, when he vanished into thin air, the way that I processed that in the moment was, I knew it. I knew it. I knew there was something beyond our mortal existence. And from that moment on, I stopped being a fear-based carbon unit. From that moment on, because I knew that death was merely a transmutation and a transformation of synthesized energy. Now, I can't tell you how I knew that at 12 years old, but I knew it. And there is a quantum leap between belief and knowing. And what I tell you as I come here today among you, you wonderful, beautiful people, I know of what I speak. I am here to tell you the truth. You simply do not have to buy into it because I say so. I ask you only to be open to the possibilities here, because I think it is not only probable but highly plausible that we are all hybrids on this planet, that we live in a multidimensional universe, and that we are multi-sensory spiritual beings who are having a mortal experience. It's not just a bumper sticker anymore, folks. It's the truth. It is the truth, which probably explains why I have felt like a misfit for my entire life and have always been certain that I've only got one toe on the planet. And thank God for gravity, the immutable law of the universe, because otherwise I would already be gone. I have asked myself 1,000 times in my life, why am I here? I feel like I've been relegated to study hall. I feel like I was thrown into a classroom with no syllabus, no preparation, and that I had to learn as I went. And at points in my life, I have resented that because I want to know. So I got to a point where I began to ask questions, not externally, but internally. And when I got still and when I got silent was when I realized that I, among millions, are a manifestation of God consciousness. We are the way God, the infinite mind in the universe, infinite intelligence, sees this world. Our eyes matter, our perceptions matter. But unfortunately, from the moment we're born, knowing we're immortal, from the moment we're born, the conditioning begins. Because the adults, the authority figures in our lives, begin to tell us, you live in a 3-dimensional realm with 5 senses. That's it. That's it. Because that's what they're comfortable with. And that's what they were relegated to believing. Because they were conditioned to believe that as well. And there are a lot of, we can talk for hours about the role of religion in our lives globally. But we don't even need to go there. And I will tell you, I'll take just a moment to tell you, there's so much information for me to deal with here. I am here all weekend long. Any one of you that has a question, has something that you want to share personally with me, anyone who has been touched by spirit knows that door has been kicked open. It can't be closed again. The mind does not retract. It expands. And once your mind has expanded to embrace what is the true nature of yourself, you cannot shut that down. And so please, I am not untouchable. I am someone that you can talk to and relate to on a personal level at any time. And I will be here all weekend long. So please don't hesitate to approach me. Now, how many little kids have come out of their bedrooms in the morning and said, "Mommy, Grandma read me a bedtime story last night." And Mommy said, "Oh no, honey. Your grandma died before you were born. It was just a dream. It was just your imagination." No, it wasn't. Grandma visited and read her a bedtime story. And because of that knowing that we're immortal, because I know that we are recycled souls. The reason that I know that is because when I was 17 years old, standing on the hearthstone of the fireplace in our parlor in a farmhouse that was actually a portal cleverly disguised as a farmhouse, I felt a presence manifest to my right. And everyone in my family saw her, but she was facing me, and no one saw her face except me. And I did not disclose to my family who I saw for more than 30 years because I knew that they would be burdened with the knowledge, and so I reserved it for myself to process. I felt her manifest. My father saw her first, sitting at the dining room table in the adjacent room. He dropped his fork. It hit the china. I looked up and I saw him staring at me, but he wasn't staring at me, he was staring to my right. And then every head at the table turned, and there was my mother and my 4 sisters looking at something that I didn't want to look at. And yet when I turned my face, I saw a mirror image reflection of myself, dressed in clothes from the 1700s, with her hair all gray and swept up in a bun, same eyes, same nose, same facial structure, cheekbones, lips, everything. And when she smiled at me, I knew why our family was at that farm. I knew it. I knew when I was 12 years old that someday I would tell this story. Now, if you're looking for a scary story, you can go watch this fictional film called The Conjuring. And you'll get a good scare out of it, but it's not the truth. If you want to take a spiritual journey, I invite you to read the trilogy House of Darkness, House of Light. It took me 7 years to write, edit, and publish these books. And interestingly, the day that it went live, Volume 3, was 7 days to the day that I began the project. I began on August 7th, 2007, and the last book went out into the world on August 7th, 2014. There were 7 members in my family. Those of you that are familiar with numerology know the significance of that number, the spirituality of it, the unity of it. Now, I will tell you that the research has been done and that there is no ancestral link to my family and the people who inhabited that farmhouse for 8 generations prior to our arrival. None. But there is a sense of familiarity, a familial contact and connection. And the fact is that we are all connected, that there is something that is absolutely real. We might consider it intangible, but there is something absolutely real, and it is called cosmic consciousness. And what I am here today to talk about, among other things, is the merging of science and spirituality. Now, 60 years ago, our friends above, and I do not call them aliens any more than I call any of you aliens, they are indigenous to this planet as we are. They've been here for millennia. They've watched us evolve. They've helped us evolve. Sometimes I know they're just shaking their heads. No way has this experiment gone so far awry. But the fact is that we live in a multi-dimensional universe. And here's the big secret that totally perturbs, I can't tell you how many in the paranormal field have said, but that's not our line. And I say, okay, but it is the truth. There is no veil. The veil is the illusion. The veil is the illusion, not the spirits, not the ETs, not the angels. The veil is the illusion. Now, I do not claim to be an oracle. I do not claim to be anything other than a humble messenger. And I've realized through the telling of our story and chronicling these events that I have, in the beginning infantile stages, have completed my mission and fulfilled my personal destiny. The reason that I did what I did was completely selfish. I don't want to come back. If I acknowledge the spirits and the impact that they've had on our lives, if I've been able to touch countless hearts and minds around this globe with this story, I feel like my work here should be done. I don't want to come back. I want to be free of this realm because I cannot tolerate the imperfections in it. And I have moments of supreme hopelessness about the future of our race. But then, I'll close my eyes and I'll have a vision, and I'll go off planet, which I do regularly. I have friends out there, our brothers and sisters, who say, but no, you don't understand. Well, then I get a little angry because, I do this show every Tuesday night with my para partner, George R. Lopez. It's called A World Awakening. It's on the Blog Talk Radio Network. You can connect right to it on Facebook, which is the official home of the paranormal, by the way. Every paranormal group on the planet has a Facebook page. And that's not a bad thing. I think cyberspace is very roomy. It's very comfortable. I don't have an issue with that. And it is a great place to affect cosmic consciousness. I have 25,000 followers just on Facebook and counting. And so I can post eating chocolate, not feeling guilty, and I'll get 300 responses to that. Really. But then I'll post a 10-minute video of Paul Hellyer, the Right and Honorable Paul Hellyer, and I know they're all watching it. But not a single like, not a single comment. And then I write back, you fear-based carbon units, you. Wake up. Is there anything more important, anything, any question on this planet, in this realm, more important than yes or no, or we alone? Well, I can answer that for you. Not only are we not alone, but what we're watching flying around in the sky is probably what we are also worshiping as our creator. Now, can the government release that information? Hell no. They can't. You know why? Because they're considered the penultimate authority figure. And if they say they're real, then they must be real. So, instead, we have been charged as the credible, significant points of contact. We are also the point of disclosure. We are. It is something to carry. It is something to know, because you know what? We can only do it one person at a time. We can only contact with each other one person at a time. Unless, of course, you have my kind of visibility. So I thank Warner Brothers for The Conjuring. No matter how much they took our beautiful story, which was essentially a love story, and twisted and turned it into a horror film. By the way, the first and only horror film I have ever seen in my life. And because really, been there, done that, I don't need to go to a theater to be scared. I took care of that when I was a kid and overcame it. And the only way, the only true way to overcome fear is to embrace it. Embrace it. Thank it. Give it a big fat hug and say, thank you for every single time you saved me from myself. Every single time you told me, no, don't get in that car with that guy. No, don't go down that dark alley. No, you don't want to go out at 3 a.m. into the city by yourself. No, no, no. Fear has saved each and every one of us from ourselves, from our own flawed, mortal decision-making capacity, which is entirely self-serving and filled with self-gratification. Once we make that cosmic leap into consciousness, into understanding that all is one, then we start to understand that there is a point of integration. Now, 2 years ago, I shamefully admit this, I didn't want to talk about ETs. Absolutely not. because I live in a society where I am taken more credibly as a seer of ghosts than a seer of alien spacecraft. Okay? So I compartmentalized. I said, okay, this is this experience here. And this experience we're going to put over here. And we're not going to discuss it. Not now. And then I did an interview for Mysterious World TV, and about 2/3 of the way through the interview, one of the two women who was there with me turned to me and she said, Andrea, have you ever had any experience with extraterrestrials? I looked directly into a 3D camera and I said, you know what? Yes, but you can't use this film footage. I'll tell you, but you cannot use this film footage. A week prior, I'd had a close encounter on Skype that shook me to the core. I had seen a being I had never seen before. They love Skype, by the way. I mean, if you want to have a close encounter, honey, all you have to do is get on Skype. Either they're downloading you through all their digital stuff that's going on, and you can hear in the background, or you can actually have, like I did, a face-to-face encounter, an interface, which occurred between myself and a friend of mine who had written a piece of music for me called The Shadows Are High. She'd written it 25 years prior. That summer, I asked her while I was in Rhode Island on a book tour if she had anything laying around that I could use as a backdrop for my videos. She said, yes, I do. And she gave me this beautiful composition. She's a wonderful pianist and composer, and she had called me up on Skype, doot, 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 doot. I'm like, oh, who's calling me? And it was Susan McVicker, who is also among us, someone who has been touched by spirit, someone who knows. And I opened it up, she played that piece of music for me, and I knew every single note of it, knew it. And I'm sitting there and the tears are pouring off my face. And then all of a sudden I see lights and waves, like a wavelength, a frequency change, something going on Skype. I'm like, no, not now. You know, I would really like, I went into whiny mode, which actually sometimes works. Really. And please don't interfere. I really want to talk to Susan. Well, I got ignored. Rule number one, they do not always come when called, and they do not always leave when banished. Just so you know. And all of a sudden, I saw these brilliant, beautiful lights, panels of lights. And I saw what looked like a cross with studs, silver or platinum studs that went across. And it was because it was up his head and across from shoulder to shoulder. And as he lifted his head and looked at me with two, see the color of your chairs? That color. Red laser light orb eyes that locked into mine. And I said, Susan, do you see it? Susan, do you see it? Susan, are you still there, and what do you see? And she said, I think I see the back of a head. And I said, I see the front. And I started after about, and you know, time is elusive at best, non-existent actually. So, you know, I'm fishing around. I could not break his stare. And I know that I was being communicated with, but I was fishing around, looking for my mouse. Where's my mouse? And I finally felt the little sucker and pulled it over and got my icon onto disconnect call. And I cut him off because my brain had taken as much as it could. That was it. And I knew that there was a correlation between being asked that question a week later and having that experience. Well, 6 months after the fact, I get a phone call from the producer, and she says, it's been done. I want you to watch it. I want you to say yes. I knew instantly what she was talking about, and I knew instantly what she had included in that video. And I said yes. Because if everything is one thing, then there is not only correlation, but integration between spirit and extraterrestrial activity. When we moved to the farm, yes, I saw the spooks right away, right away. Hadn't seen them. We had visited there many times before we actually bought the house. And nothing, absolutely nothing. We thought, oh, this is great. We're moving into a piece of living history. We didn't realize we were going to be dwelling with the dead. 8 generations of one extended family lived and died in that house, and some of them never left. Now, the reason that I know that it is a portal is because not only could we see to the past, but they could see into the future. One night, my mother came out of her room. She was hungry. She was wasting away. It seemed like she was starving herself to death. She said, "Annie, I'm hungry." I was like, hallelujah. You know, she's hungry. I went through the closed down dining room, into the front parlor, into the front corridor, into the kitchen, into the pantry. And now, it was before the days of microwaves. It was the early 70s. So I had to warm up the beef stew. And in the interim, in the time that it took me to do that and make her a cup of coffee, because coffee is nectar of the gods, and she required some immediately, she went to throw a log in the fireplace. And when she did it, she heard laughter behind her and turned around, and there was a family having dinner in our dining room, sitting at their own hand-hewn oak table with benches on either side. There were a woman who was dressed in a full-length skirt, who was chastising her children to go sit at the table, take their places at the bench, while she finished cooking dinner over a fireplace, a roaring fire, in a fireplace that had been sealed for more than 100 years when we moved in. The entire chimney had been removed. It was no longer safe. They closed it off. There were 2 men sitting at the table. They had pewter steins indicative of that time, the 1700s. And one of them looked into the parlor, and he recognized that there was something in front of the fireplace. And he nudged the man beside him and pointed out my mother, and she was the ghost. You know, I know what the words empirical evidence mean. That's empirical evidence. When I walked back in from the kitchen, my mother was gleaming. She was glowing. She was smiling for what felt to me like the first time in years. You know why? It made sense. It made sense to my pragmatic, intellectual Virgo mother. Now this makes sense. And so she released her fear in the same way that I had done at the age of 12. I'm not afraid of death. I don't relish any pain, and I'd like to avoid that, thank you very much. But I am not afraid to die. I don't welcome it, but I don't shun it, because it is simply a part of the natural process of things. It is a transformation and a transmutation of spiritual energy. They know that. They know that. I've wanted to know why I've been relegated to this classroom. Now I know. Holy shift. My. All right, hey, let's just take a look at these notes for a second here. Okay, did we talk about a realization of oneness? Does everybody feel it? Do you feel your thoughts going out into the great realm? You feel it? Okay, well, all right, George said to me when we first started our show, A World Awakening, he said, what are we doing here with this? I said, we're tossing pebbles in the pond. Pebbles in the pond. We're going to watch the concentric circles grow and glow. About a month ago, 2 months ago maybe, I said, I need to go back and get a boulder. So what I did instead was I got on a plane and I went to Boulder. And a lovely woman I think you're all familiar with, named Regina Meredith, stuck me in front of a camera. And they did hair and makeup first, just like today. It was great. The less I have to do for upkeep, the better, really. And because does it really matter? Really? You know, from the neck up is where we've all got it going, you know. So, but if you want to pack some stuff on my face, go ahead. And then I sat for hours and hours and hours with Regina and the bright light in the firmament, Paula Harris. And we went out and ate, and we talked, and then we talked at the studio, and then we talked afterwards. And, you know, when I think of the energy and the enthusiasm that we threw out into the universe over those few days, it makes me feel like I've made some sort of contribution. I'm quite thrilled with it. And even when we just finished, she said, "We've just scratched the surface. Will you come back?" I said, "Yes, absolutely." Now, what has happened here? Because I said yes to one woman at Mysterious World TV, all these other women have come into my life and put me here on this stage with you. That's a miracle. That is. Now, I don't want any of the men in the room to take this personally, and I don't want you to be upset with me in any way, okay? You guys have screwed up this planet in a huge, huge way, and we're taking over, just so you know. Now, not all of you have screwed it up, but some of you have. Need I say Syria? How about Iraq, Iran, you know, Afghanistan? Okay. We are coming to a time when the subordination, the relegation, and the victimization of women and children and animals on this planet will come to an end. You know why? Because I said enough. No more. And now I have a venue to say it. Because really, I've had it. You know, I'm a patient sort. But when I see no evolution, and when I see quantum steps being taken backwards societally, no fat, white, old man is ever going to tell me what I do with my God-given body, period. Done. Enough. So I kind of go off from time to time. You know, I'm harmless, really. Unless you're doing harm to the planet, and then all bets are off. All bets are off. I'm just being honest. You know, Paula, just before I came out, she's like, don't scare them, honey. Sorry. If you're a fear-based carbon unit, you're probably not sitting in this room. I think all of you can take it. My followers call me a number of things. One of them is, it's nice, it's all nice, at least to my face. And one of them is fearless leader. And I can't think of a higher compliment than that. I can't. I like Queen of the Alternate Universe, too. That works for me as well. She's like, that will scare them. I said, no, it won't. Is anyone scared? Any fear in this room? I'm not feeling it, and I would feel it if it was here. No fear. Excellent. Okay, good. We've got that out of the way. I do speaking engagements all over the country. Starting next year, it will be all over the world. I'm going to the UK, I'm going to Australia by invitation. Can you believe they actually asked me to come? I was invited to a college in it was in Massachusetts, and a private Catholic college. And I thought, okay, they invited me because they intend to sacrifice me and burn me at the stake in the quadrangle for fun. I know it. But I went anyway because I am the fearless leader. And sitting in front of me were 600 kids. And I said, who's seen The Conjuring? Every hand went up. I was like, well, okay. Now I want you to put that right out of your mind because that's a piece of fiction. And here's what really happened. And these kids were so tuned in and turned on by the possibilities that they inspired me. I spent 5.5 hours at a lectern and all over the stage making eye-to-eye contact with these brilliant young minds who were fearless and who said no to their own indoctrination. So that's what puts the holy in the shift for me. That's when I can afford to have moments of hopefulness again, because I look out into this room and I see your glowing eyes, and I know that you are tuned in and turned on, and what we are putting out consciously in mind right now, this minute, makes a difference in the world. It does, because why? Because thoughts are things. Everything that we accept as proven science began as pseudoscience. You know, earlier the crystal radio got mentioned. Well, one thing that George Lopez and I do together is we speak to spirit, or what we think is spirit, through something called shack hack. It's an old transistor radio that is no longer made. They're hard as hell to come by. But Radio Shack made these for years. And he tweaks it so that he ups the frequency, he ups the vibration, he changes the wavelength so that it's with ease that they can communicate with us. And talk about coming full circle, talk about feeling my destiny. The first time that I was able to, and he does it with very specific methodology, which is really amazing. It's redundant responses and trigger words. So he gives them words to pronounce that you would never hear on broadband radio, like chrysanthemum. You have to say the word chrysanthemum 3 times and then give me the answer to your question so that I know that it is you. And the spirits that I grew up with, the voices that I knew as a child, I have heard come consistently through that little box. And I can't tell you the thrill of hearing their voices again, because I'm connected to them, because we are family. I don't know how. I don't know if it's soul connection. I don't know. That's why I do what I do. That's why I coupled with him, because I'm the woo-woo spiritualist and he's the science. He's the scientist. He's the one that's really seeking this out in terms of technology, because the only way that we can make the skeptics drop their jaws to the floor and leave them there is to come up with consistent contact. And we're doing it. All the evidence is out there. Contact me personally, and I will latch you right into where you can find all of it. How exciting. We live in a new age. You know, this isn't something that's coming. It's now. The ascension is now. How many of you are having inexplicable headaches? How many of you are having joint pain, but you haven't done anything to hurt that joint? There are so many. We are changing at a subatomic level. Our cellular structure is changing as we evolve. How exciting. Because you know, the thing is that yes, it's painful. It hurts sometimes. I wake up in the morning and go, really? Am I really only 56? Because I feel like I'm 156. But this has to be. This has to happen exactly the way that it is. Everything happens with purpose and reason. And even if that reason is not revealed to us immediately, we have got to forego that whole notion of instant gratification. You know, 60 years ago, we were provided with some of the technology that we now walk around the world with our faces buried in. And what purpose does that serve? Because you got 100 likes on a comment on Facebook? Because you've got 1,000 followers on LinkedIn? Are you communicating with these people? Are you having tangible contact? Are you reaching out to each other in meaningful ways? If the technology that was gifted to us becomes counterproductive, then what's the point? So, you know, that's another thing I go off on. You know, I get on a bus very infrequently, only because it's a bus. And everyone is looking down in some kind of technology. Everyone. They're walking the streets of New York and literally bumping into each other. Look up. Look up. That's where it's happening. They're all around us, omnipresent like God. You know why? Because they probably are. They probably are. Now, I used to say, if I have the sight, then everyone does. I've reconsidered this notion a little bit. How much time do I have? Good. I've reconsidered this notion a little bit because when I go and I do these large venues, I'll ask some very specific questions. I have something on my nose. How many of you have blue or green eyes? Up go the hands. How many of you are the firstborn in your family? Up go the hands. How many of you have the Rh negative blood factor? Up go the hands. I would have been spontaneously aborted if my mother didn't get shots, myself and my 4 siblings, because her blood was incompatible with my father's. So for this I am grateful that I was born and probably chose to be born into this age where I could actually survive and thrive and bring something to the planet of value. Now, I did not feel the need to breed. My sisters have done plenty of that. We're okay in that department. But I did feel that there was some purpose and mission. And so anyone who knows me well knows I consider volume 1, 2, and 3 of House of Darkness, House of Light to be my triplets. And let me tell you about a gestation period. Really? 30 years? It took 30 years for me to find the wherewithal. And I knew from the age of 12, the first thing that I said to my mother when we moved to the farm, and I knew there was no money left. Everything had gone into purchasing this 200-acre farm. Mom, I need a journal. I'm seeing things that I need to write down. And when I filled that one, she bought me another one. And when I filled that one, she bought me another one. And that was the foundation of a trilogy of books, 1,500 pages long, that is truly a spiritual journey of enlightenment. Now, let's not kid ourselves here. There is nothing woo-woo or easy about enlightenment. Nothing. It is hard work. It requires a concentrated effort. It requires an amount of introspection that most people are not willing to invest. It requires encountering things that you just simply cannot wrap your mind around. It requires you to come into contact with what is essentially our reality. And this world isn't it. It's not the truth of our existence. We are essentially spiritual beings having a mortal experience. Now, I ended the trilogy with 2 words: class dismissed. I can't tell you the blowback from that. What do you mean, that's it? You're not going to write any more about this? You have nothing more to say on this subject? We'll see. We'll see. But right now, I understand and I feel that there is a point of integration. There is a point of correlation between extraterrestrial existence and spiritual activity on this planet. And I'll tell you how I know that. We moved into that farmhouse when I was 12 years old. When I was 13, I found myself inexplicably standing on the front lawn of that house, the big, expansive, huge lawn. And the sky was crystal blue. It was beautiful. And then all of a sudden I looked up and it looked like someone had emptied just a huge bag of multicolored cotton balls into the atmosphere. And I knew that the sun was setting behind me, and I thought perhaps this is just, the sunset reflecting off the clouds. I was good in science class. I figured that out. And then all of a sudden, the sun disappeared, and I did this. And over the top of my head came a point of a ship, and it was huge. It was beyond my ability to describe to you how big it was. And it was being followed by a number of other ships, and every single one of them was in a geometrical form. Now, what have we all been taught in school? There's one universal language, and that's mathematics, geometry. I mean, you think of a geometrical figure, and there was a ship that was following this huge ship in this flotilla. It was absolutely silent. Even the birds were silent. There was no noise. And I watched this go over my head, and I remember distinctly thinking, am I the only one who's seeing this? It took 35 years for me to find out that I wasn't the only one that was seeing this flotilla. It moved down the eastern seaboard, then it cut across the pond, and then it went all through Western Europe. And when the English started to scramble the fighter jets to go after it, it took a hard right turn and disappeared up over the North Pole. Probably really smart. I was meant to see that. Just like my sister Christine was meant to see the ship that landed in our butter and sugar corn. It was about this big around, angled, flat top, beautiful colors all around it, just iridescent, beautiful colors that I hadn't seen before. It came in on an angle, it crushed our butter and sugar corn. Still upset about that. It was a great crop that year. And then after about a minute or two, and of course time is suspended when these things happen, my mother, my sister Christine, and my sister Cindy, and I were all standing at the window overlooking the garden spot. We all saw it. Christine has no memory of it. When it was time to write the books, my sisters, my parents were very forthcoming, except for Christine. I live with this woman. And the day that she put me up against a wall and said, my house wasn't haunted until you moved into it, was like, okay, we have a problem here. And, you know, apparently I am going to have to write her segment of this story secondhand from everybody else in the family, because she would not divulge her experiences. And so one day I was just so upset about it, I called Cindy, who lives a couple miles down the road. I said, could you get up here and go talk to her? Because, you know, I'm at her section of the book, and I need firsthand accounts here. And Cindy went into the bathroom and said, Chris, come on. You know, Anne's worked so hard on this. You've got to tell. And Christine grabbed a hold of Cindy and shook her shoulders, and she said, why did she come to me? Why did she come to me? And the tears flowed, and they embraced. And about 3 hours later, when Chris was able to gather herself, she and her dog Libby came out into the parlor. She sat down, she said, go sit at the computer. And I typed as fast as my fingers would carry me across that keyboard for about another 3 hours. And then she said, that's it, don't ask me anything else, I'm done. I get it. I get it. Fear is the most powerful human emotion. The only thing that can vanquish it is love. That's the only thing that can quell that ugly storm. Embrace your fear. Accept it as part of your mortal experience and watch it dissipate into the ether. Yes, there is a merging of science and spirituality. Because we are so technically minded, we think that we have to have proof. We need to have proof. The only way we can have proof is through the scientific method. We must have proof. I don't need any proof. I know what I know. And I don't need anyone's validation. None. I can live a perfectly happy life this time around, hoping against hope. I don't have to do this again. But if I do, I will, because, you know, it's my assignment with no syllabus. Okay, we've covered enlightenment being painful. We've covered vibrational frequency changes. We've covered the fact that women are taking over the planet. I'm so glad you guys are prepared for this. I don't know if you really are. But you know, we women, we are the nurturers and we are the lovers and we preserve life. We don't destroy it. And it's time. It's time. I think that there was a time in the course of human history when we were at the reins. But that changed for some ungodly reason. But it's time to reclaim that power. We are all very powerful individuals, each one of us. And as long as we're putting out into the ether what we know is good and pure and true and righteous, as long as we live, how we comport our lives in this realm does matter. It does matter. I ask you to take that on faith. I've seen for myself how relevant it is. Several of the spirits that we saw at the farmhouse had claimed their own lives. Now think back a couple of 100 years. You think you're told now in your church of choice that you cannot kill yourself because that's not your choice. It's God's choice, and you just have to suck it up and deal with it until the end. And that's it. Well, that was a lot more. The hell and damnation, fire and brimstone a couple of 100 years ago makes this look like lightweight stuff that we get now. And I have often wondered if these spirits who claimed their own lives for whatever reason did not cross was because for them the light might be the eternal fire of damnation. What did they buy into while they were earthbound that leads them to stay here? Is it fear? I think that's a legitimate question. The collective consciousness, the cosmic consciousness, it's as real as the table in front of you and the pens in your hands. Did you all take that in? It's just as real. And we impact it with every single thought that we have. I know that like I know my own name. I know it. Confusion breeds fear. It's a base human emotion. To have come full circle the way that I have, and I don't know for sure who we're talking to through the spirit box, but I'm pretty sure these are voices that I recognize. But were they spirits when I was a child, or were they extraterrestrial beings when I was a child, or are they one and the same? These are questions that simply must be answered, and I will not stop. And I promise you, I will not drop dead until I've got those answers to impart to the world, because now I have a venue to do it. Now people are listening. I don't feel like I am screaming into the wind anymore. Now I can bring the tone down a little bit and soften it because you're listening. Glory, hallelujah. I have one more thing to share with you, and I saved it for the end. I've only got about 8 minutes left here, but you know, I don't really put any stock into time. One of our brilliant speakers spoke a little earlier about the heart connection. I want you to wrap your minds around this. I don't need technology to make that connection. I understand why the world does. I get it. But I don't need it. You see, if the government were to disclose, it would fracture belief systems all over the globe. We could face mass suicides, absolutely needless loss of life. And I think they understand that, which is why we do what we do, because we're spoon-feeding this information out into the world. It's not a question of if they exist. That's been long answered. But how many people are walking around oblivious to this? How many choose ignorance because it's comfortable. And I'm sorry, but in the age of mass technology and communication, global communication, ignorance is a choice. It's not a state of being, it's a choice. Now, I'm here to shake up the world to the extent that I am able. That's why I'm here. I consider myself a hybrid. I consider myself a seer. I think that the reason why I used to say we all have the same gifts and abilities and, you know, it's intrinsic to our nature, it's part of who we are, I'm not so sure about that anymore. I'm not. I know what I know. I know what I can see. You're all, I mean, if you could see the light around you, if you could see what I see of you, you'd be inspired by you. You are all surrounded by spirit. We are all surrounded by spirit all the time. People ask me constantly, how do I connect with my loved ones? You want to know how easy it is? Talk to them. Talk to them. You will get a response, and it will be tailor-made to your capacity to understand it. You will know. You won't guess. You won't wonder anymore. You will know. Talk to them. My mother said, there's no need to mourn them. They're not really gone. Now, we don't have them to hug anymore, you know. It's a small price to pay for being able to keep those lines of communication open, simply by knowing that those lines of communication were never shut down in the first place. What a beautiful thing. What a truly beautiful thing. I am heart connection. I don't need the spirit box. I don't need the crystal radio. I don't need to be hardwired to anything. I already am. The reason that I feel like such a misfit with one toe on the planet, and George, the Capricorn, constantly reining me back down. You've got work to do down here. You cannot just float away. You know, okay, fine. I'll stay and I'll do my work. This is my work now. This is my work. This is the reason that I'm here. And I wondered for decades, where I just didn't fit in and frankly wanted to leave. Nothing fit, certainly not me in the grand scheme of things. I will tell you that as what I consider and perceive myself to be, which is some sort of hybrid, spiritual something, I wish that I could tell you what it is, in the same way that I wish that I could tell you what I saw the day that we walked into that farmhouse. I know what it's not. It's not an optical illusion. It's not mass hysteria. It's not a figment of my imagination. It's not those things. I don't know who we're talking to on the spirit box, through it, at that wavelength, on that vibration, in that frequency. I don't know, but we're talking to someone, and they are benevolent. They are benevolent, and the essence of us is love. Embrace that notion and let the fear dissipate. Embrace that notion. We are love. And my connection, I feel no threat from above. None. None. Now, Paul Hellyer says there's some things we might not want to know about, and you know, do they all have the same benevolent intention towards us? I don't know. Everything that I've contacted speaks to love, speaks to heart. And I'll tell you, I've been very resentful in my life because I never got abducted. Well, what's wrong with me? You know? I mean, now my eggs are too old, so that's kind of out. You know, so what's the deal? You know, I didn't have any lost time, unaccounted for time in my life until 2 weeks ago. Until 2 weeks ago. And I'm a night owl. I wake up between 3 and 3:15 every morning. It doesn't matter if I've only slept an hour, I'm up. And I went to the computer. Christine gets up at 5:30. I said, hit the button on the coffee. I already said it for you. I'll take Libby out, Libby, her dog, because it was freezing. So I threw on my ugly blue robe. If you saw it, your eyes would bleed, you would understand. And I grabbed a cigarette and a lighter. Okay, I'll admit it. It's addiction. Don't talk to me about habit. But if you think of it as nutritious, it won't hurt you. And I went out on the back deck, and the sun wasn't even up yet. I went out on the back deck, and I said, Libby, go do your business. And I'm standing, I lit the cigarette, and I put the lighter down on the glass top table, and then I blinked my eyes, and my cigarette was gone. The lighter was there, the empty ashtray was there, but my cigarette was gone. Well, all right, they're not cheap. And I wanted to know where it went. I smoke American Spirit. They're really expensive. And where's my cigarette? And I'm looking. Where is it? It's gone. Now I'm really perturbed. Now I'm like, Libby, come in the house. Libby, come in the house. Come in the house, Libby. I don't hear anything. And so now I'm right to aggravated. And I walked into the house. I said, Christine, your dog does not listen to me. And it's freezing outside. Go get your dog. And she said, Anne. And she stepped aside. And there was Libby. And she said, honey, you let Libby in the house at least 15 minutes ago. I was coming to fetch you to find out what was going on with you, that you're still outside and it's freezing. And then she looked at me quizzically and she said, your hair went almost completely gray in the last 15 minutes. I don't want to know. I do want to know. I want to know. And I know that my connection is in heart, and I know that that is my point of light. And what I say to you is be not afraid. Be the light you seek. I am your point of contact. Take my hand. I know the way home. I honor and cherish all of you. Namaste.